So hello guys, it's me Leo and I'm here with,
Abijah.
and we're going to be doing chapter 21 known as the progressive era in the textbook. And yeah, so first things first, attitude and motives. The causes of reform came from the late 1890s when a severe depression hit and left many people without jobs. As a result of this, people began to question whether the government was sufficient and whether laissez-faire and social Darwinism were actually like valid points within the American system. So in the late 1900s, um, America saw the development of large corporations, and they also saw events such as child labor and fires such as the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. And people, they after the fire, they realized that it's time to reform. That they can't just sit down and just let things happen and allow big businesses to control America. So muckrakers were journalists who reported the negative side of American society. They recorded the economic, social, and political downfalls that were seen in the 1890s and 1900s. And muckrakers such as Upton Sinclair published books like The Jungle in 1906 to expose the conditions in many industries in America. The Jungle revealed the negative aspects of factory conditions such as the meat industry, where meat wasn't really safe for people to eat. And also on McClure's magazine by Samuel S. McClure, he uncovered political and corporal corruption that happened within our American system. Political reforms in city states. The first one that I saw was the municipal reform, and it refers to changes in the city government made to change and to encourage greater efficiency and honesty and responsiveness. What that basically means is that people just didn't want to corrupt government anymore. They want to get benefits from the government, like public services and public schools and stuff like that. Muckrakers inspired urban reformers to break political alliances in order to improve life for the common people. As I said before, books such as The Jungle, they expose the negative aspects of American politics and American corporations. So as a result, people reformed and they decided to elect people that didn't have like a corrupt background and actually would change let's say a city would elect a mayor for the benefit of the people to provide new public services. And an example of this would be Samuel Gold Rule Jones. He was the mayor of Toledo, Colorado, who served from 1897 to 1904. He made reforms to open public playgrounds as well as kindergartens. And this is a continuation of the political reforms in city and states. And some of the state reforms, as we see in the 1900s, there was the 17th Amendment was passed, which allowed senators to be elected by popular vote instead of by state legislators. Now people actually had the power to vote for representatives that would actually benefit them instead of having the states just pick representatives for them. And during this time, people also got the benefits of recall, referendum, and initiative. So recall enabled voters to remove unsatisfactory public officials from office, such as, let's say, any corrupt governor or senator they felt wasn't good and wasn't providing like any benefits for them. And referendum gave voters the ability to approve or reject legislative measures. So now they could petition against a law or any act they felt was unnecessary or would harm them. And initiative gave voters the right to introduce a subject for legislation, usually through petition. So this is all these were major steps for political reform, since this gave people opportunity to actually have representation in government through U.S. senators and yeah. The major political reform within the nation was Theodore Roosevelt's Square Deal, and it consisted of conservation of natural resources, control of corporations, and consumer protection. And in the labor aspect, one incident that happened was the coal strike of 1902. Basically, coal miners protested a mine, and as a result of their protest, the owners of the coal mine actually shut down the mines. And as a result, Theodore Roosevelt felt that he needed to step in, and he invited members of the coal mine union as well as mine owners to the White House. And he invited them to negotiate and actually set terms that would, be a square deal for them, as in have equal pay, and which allowed, have equal pay, and as well as still make profit for the coal mining company. And also, another aspect was consumer protection, and Teddy Roosevelt passed the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act, in both of them in 1906. This ensured people were not being lied to about the food that they were eating, and made sure that people weren't being poisoned by any meat or food that they were eating. And the third aspect was conservation, and he passed the Forest Reserve Act in 1891. Basically, it reserved 150 million acres of forest, and it preserved them for future generations. This happened because Theodore Roosevelt that saw that we stopped expanding west, and as a result, we were using up most of our natural resources. So to preserve all the natural resources and the nature that we have, we passed the Forest Reserve Act in 1891.
Hey guys, now I'm going to do my half of the chapter, and I'm going to try and do this fast and better than Dunphy. But I'm covering Taft's presidency, and as we know, Taft was the successor to Roosevelt, and when he came into office, he followed many of Roosevelt's policies, as he trust busted twice as many antitrust cases as Roosevelt did, and he passed the Mann-Elkins Act, which gave the Interstate Commerce Commission the power to suspend new railroad rates and oversee the telephone, telegraph, and the cable companies. Also, he passed the 16th Amendment, which made it legal for the U.S. government to collect income tax. Now, he also, while he did enforce some progressive policies, he also took conservative action, such as establishing the Bureau of Mines, adding large tracts in the Appalachian Mountains to national forest reserves, and setting aside federal oil lands. So Taft was kind of in the middle, as he showed both progressive action as he was president and conservative action as he was president. And as a result of that, many progressives in the Republican Party, they looked at his conservative actions, and they questioned him because he had other conservative actions like the Payne-Aldrich tariff, which raised the tariff on most imports, and many progressives were outraged against it, but Taft defended it. And then you had the Pinchot-Ballinger controversy, where Richard Ballinger, who was on Taft's cabinet, he opened public lands in Alaska for private development, and Gifford Pinchot was a politician who basically called Ballinger out on it, and Taft fired Gifford Pinchot for questioning Ballinger. And then you had the actions of House Speaker Joe Cannon, who was displaying dictatorial powers in Congress, and he was the leading conservative in Congress, and nobody was stopping him. And then you have the midterm elections in 1910, where Taft supported conservative candidates for Congress. You can see Dunphy back here. and the candidates that he supported lost drastically. So as a result of all these conservative actions Taft took, the Republican Party was split. And that's going to have an effect when we get to the election of 1912. Now also, in the another party that took part in the election of 1912 was the Socialist Party. It was created in 1901, and their main creator was Eugene V. Debs, who and he led their party actually in 5 elections from 1900 to 1920. He was their presidential candidate. And their platform mainly was for public ownership of railroads, utilities, and major industries. And basically, they were for progressivism, but they were for it in a very radical perspective. So progressives didn't want to associate themselves with them because of the radical ideas that they had. And they did gain some success eventually, as their ideas of public ownership of utilities, the 8-hour workday, and employee pensions were adopted by the federal government. So that leads us to the election of 1912, where you have Taft, who was the Republican candidate, you have Debs from the Socialists, you have the Roosevelt from the Progressives, which was the group that split off from the Republican Party, and then you have Wilson, who represents the Democrats. So mainly it was between Roosevelt and of the Progressive Party and Wilson of the Democrat. And Roosevelt campaigned the idea of new nationalism, which called for more government regulation of businesses and unions, women's suffrage, and for social welfare programs. While Wilson promoted New Freedom, which limited big business and government, ended corruption, and supported small business to build competition economically. Now, because of the Republican split, Wilson easily won the election, as he won 435 electoral votes and the majority of the popular vote. And Wilson's victory helped Democrats gain control of Congress. Now, when Wilson took office, he implemented New Freedom immediately in 3 different ways, and he attacked the triple wall of privilege, as it is, which was the tariffs, banking, and the trust. With the tariffs, he passed the Underwood Tariff in 1913, which did substantially lower tariffs, and actually it lowered tariffs for the first time in 50 years in American history. Yet it raised the income tax that Taft had made legal in his prior amendment from 1 to 6%. Now, with regards to banking, he passed the Federal Reserve Act, which had had the federal government regulate banking using Federal Reserve notes or dollar bills to give into the public to purchase goods and services. And he had 12 district banks supervised by the Federal Reserve Board. Now, with regards to business or trust regulation, he passed the Clayton Antitrust Act, which strengthened the Sherman Antitrust Act for breaking up monopolies and exempted unions from being prosecuted as trust. Now, he also passed the Federal Trade Commission to regulate business practices because they were an agency that investigated and took action against unfair trade practices in every industry but banking and transportation. Now, he also passed the Federal Farm Loan Act, which created federal farm loan banks, 12 federal farm loan banks, and the Child Labor Act, which prohibited the shipment of products manufactured by children under 14 years old in interstate commerce. So now we have the other aspect, which is African Americans in the Progressive Era. And we're just going to run through this. Basically, you had the 2 main leaders of African Americans in this time, which were Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. And Washington focused on economics, and he believed that only by securing economic base could African Americans gain political and social equality. But Du Bois was strictly against that, and he actually believed that he was more radical, and he believed that by political and social independence, with political and social independence would come economic equality. So there was a great migration, and many African Americans moved north to try and find better conditions. So here we have the Great Migration, where many African Americans moved north, but they realized that economic conditions were exactly the same. So you had the different organizations that were created in order to help African Americans who were across the country. Now we have women's suffrage in the progressive movement, and you had different. They were advocating for rights with different parties, such as NASA, and they had the National Women's Party, and the suffragists who all campaigned women's rights. And eventually they did gain success as they had the 19th Amendment passed and other reforms were given to women. So yeah, that's the screencast.